There is no fair fight. One's physical condition, size, and skill versus the emergence of weapons, subterfuge, or greater numbers, each tips the balance of favor. Training improves the odds of success. Each lesson is leverage. Thus, the most effective discipline provides the most levers. With the pervasiveness of social conflict, the ability to respond must meet the demand of everything happening at once. The combative arts have influenced generations since the dawn of civilization. There is much debate on their true origins. A menagerie of hybrids has since splintered off and evolved as each martial heritage collided. That search for a theory of everything continues, a comprehensive system to manage today's growing challenges. A modern perspective provides advantage to review historical findings with a critical eye. After analysis of styles both contemporary and classical, a data summary reveals statistical regularities with similar characteristics in structure and consistent presence in basic motor function. Thus, strip away the influences of period-driven tradition, systemic bias, fragmented logic, or terrain-based modifiers, and what lies at the nucleus is an undiluted source, an index of common denominators. These variables constitute the backbone of the cutting-edge combat biomechanics. We call these roots APA, a highly specialized capture-driven science for close quarters. Its conceptual basis is governed by a principle of complete simultaneity in every motion. The operating method unifies root mechanical principles with strategic objectives for selecting the appropriate counter to aggression. Now free from superfluous motions and notions, performance thresholds are advanced by internalizing core principles and kinetically linking biomechanics. To further our understanding, we must view the body as a magnificent machine of compound skeletal levers articulated through joint action pulleys drawn by bundles of telescoping filaments called muscle. Like all machines, it must overcome certain frictions to accelerate. All progress comes incrementally. By steadily pushing the envelope in the subtlest stages of motor behavior, the resultant motion reaches higher percentages. To squeeze the most from this machine, APA trims the fat off any action producing internal resistance. To slingshot past common sense and enter the domain of scientific discipline, we first separate out the working parts and identify factors influencing output, sophisticate their kinetics by instituting gold standards, and reintegrate the mechanisms into a unified whole. The formula is straightforward. Detail a precise sequence of model postures and maneuver between them instantly. We start with a clean slate, assuming nothing, then redesign how the body will stand, how it will rotate, and how it will move to better function in a volatile environment. Putting into action the laws of physics and the equations of geometry is best accessed through clear terminology. Key reference points help frame the precise postures for all ensuing motion relative to the immediate line of action. Proper skeletal structuring reduces the load on the muscles, conserving energy and assuring leverage takes precedence over strength as the advantage. Stances keep the most economical and ergonomical standards, establishing a starting point from which to advance all motor behavior. A stance too square to the opponent, or 0 degrees, opens too many targets. One at 90 degrees restricts weapons. Stances are designed to accommodate two states of readiness. The first anticipates possible aggression. The intent of the natural stance is preparation without escalation. It does not elevate the subject's emotional state, nor give any indication of intent, a poker face. The second state meets the threat head-on, where the circumstances necessitate the need for physical force. All stances are classified into two divisions. The weight is either on the front leg or the rear leg. A 55-45 split in weight distribution facilitates movement and full weapon use. Too deep and mobility suffers. Too shallow and stability suffers. From a fixed point, we then move to rotation, addressing two attributes. Torque being a crucial link in harnessing kinetic energy, and equalized range, which is key for developing weapon consistency for left and right sides of the body. This occurs by aligning the spine at 3 points, linking waist and shoulders, to consolidate mass, and unify mobility between the upper and lower halves of the body. The rear foot pivot acts as a release from friction, allowing the waist to turn freely. The largest links in the kinetic chain is linear motion, where we initialize movement across the field. There are only two ways to move. The front foot moves first, or the rear foot moves first. Small stances and long steps assure we seize the advantageous position by pushing the machine to its greatest limits. Skill sets provide the foundation to the transfer of force in the instruments of attack and defense. There are two protection sets: arms intercepting weapons, and postural adjustments reducing impact, and two weapon sets, one for the lower limbs and one for the upper. The arm is a two-segmented linkage. From it we derive three root motions which govern all weapon trajectories. They move centrically like a piston, eccentrically like a hinge, or concentrically like a hook. Each motion type has no more than three orientations: horizontal, vertical, and angled, giving a total of 8 fists. There are three primary phases of motion: extension, which develops full penetration and the personal sense of range; retraction, which delivers pinpoint impact and defines recovery; and follow-through, which shows the full kinetic potential by trajecting through the target. Performance progresses through satisfying the criteria of three motion frequencies: singles, doubles, and triples. The defensive positions are limb constructs using the maximum surface area to provide the greatest coverage, determined by employing proven anatomic geometry and by understanding probability. As in a zone defense, an opponent crossing the field of play is only guarded by the player presiding over a specific section of that field. A similar topography overlays the body. Critical targets grouped into manageable subsets effectively increase the predictability of an attack. This is the pivotal distinction between reacting defensively by chasing the incoming weapon versus purely protecting the zone. These target groupings are recognized at three levels: the head, torso, and below the belt. The full spectrum of trajectories are scaled down from a hemisphere of numerous possibilities to 7 distinct probability zones. This geometrical arrangement of bones serves not as blocks but as transitional fulcrums to intercept impact, redirect force, and convert it for use during the implementation of technique. The arm segments must form a structurally sound angle. Obtuse angles can be levered out of position. Acute angles will collapse. All combat functions are range critical. Regardless of attack type, closing the gap is vital to achieving control. As kinetic energy is momentum dependent, the more distance a mass has to accelerate, the greater the energy transferred on impact. Proximity to a weapon's origin reduces the momentum build. Closing range initiates entry, the ability to place hands on immediately. It jams the draw to better constrain the weapon, reducing an attack's kinetics and repeatability, and minimizes vulnerabilities by slotting the incoming attack into a probability zone. This is counterintuitive to most practices. Increasing the gap to size the situation is a critical point to a failure on multiple fronts. It causes regression into reactionary behavior or weapon chasing. It provides equal time for the opponent to continue escalation, exposes more targets, places one in the zone of highest impact, and invites more lethal alternatives to compensate. There is no time for appraisals. Response must be instinctual. Simultaneous reflex conditioning solves for both reactive and preemptive scenarios. All preceding skills are now integrated into a single cohesive unit called the check. A straight line palm to shock the head, a corresponding slip angle, and a defensive position to cover the zone under threat. A less is more approach assures decisiveness in the effort to pry past defenses to achieve first strike. The check is the first phase of engaging control angles. To prevent the confusion of too many technique variations, APA employs an unprecedented approach, a concise set of options capable of conforming to threats, control angles, An angle by definition is a relationship between 3 points: the subject, object, and the incoming instrument of attack. Each hour on this hypothetical clock is a relative position designating latitude for the path of entry to a sequence of control moves. Sparring, no longer the crowning treatment to combat, is now a search for opportunity, a bridging phase to acquiring this ever-shifting position of leverage. It is from these fundamental relationships of weapon to target where diagramming a response begins. Angles have 3 transitions, each a condition for evoking the next. The stop interrupts an opponent's momentum. The break of balance serves to offset the vertical alignment of the spine, and the control, the takedown, places him in a position more conducive for restraint. These semi-steps are modular, interchangeable to adapt to shifts in relationship. If one stage meets with resistance, a micro-adjustment assures a fluid transition into an alternative. Physical exertion is no more than 2% over the opposing force to minimize time locked in tension and keeping targets in range. Withdrawal from range breaks the flow of process and reinitializes probability of injury to 100%. The supreme authority governing all performance thresholds is the core principle of simultaneity. From the reshaping of posture through kinetics to the escalation of contact and the logic of capture, this concept regulates every aspect of training. This driving force enhances kinetic objectives by striving to instantly bridge the distance between 2 points, merging mass with acceleration. To encroach upon this threshold, 4 fundamental processes exclusive to APA are vital to providing a strategic edge. Precedence before priority assures the most critical skill elements occur first in the sequence of multiple actions. Posture transformation optimizes the instantaneous transition of an initial posture into the succeeding posture, stressing minimal internal resistance and reduction of telegraphic motion. Front plane exchange is achieved through subtle compensations in posture, allowing for the immediate substitution of one weapon for another on the target surface, such that contact is constant. This continuous replacement countermands an opponent's ability to recover quickly or reassert himself. And that which makes all possible, compression, which increases energy potential by keeping mechanisms under an internal spring load where all motion is sustained in a positive thrust toward the intended target. This primes all limbs with greater explosivity from full flexion, instilling an ever-present hunger on a hairspring trigger. It is a difference of night and day when set to propel forward. All of this serves a new threshold in timing. We move from the default approach of one action per beat, a punch, a kick, a block, to superimposing multiple actions in a single measure. Rendered as a waveform, the decay of action A and the onset of action B overlap through a seamless transition, B beginning before A ends. Here is true unification, compressing a step and check, a strike and slip, a kick, a takedown and arm lock into a self-contained unit, a new equation for problem solving. As seconds stretch on in a conflict, the likelihood of injury increases as the opportunity for control decreases. During stress, endorphins saturate the system, inhibiting pain receptors. An opponent will feel nothing and grow defiant, making the struggle uphill. A clean, swift finish is paramount. To synchronize with the extremes of the profession, one must be able to instantly achieve a state of preparedness. APA provides a method to voluntarily induce the adrenal flow, the static adrenal state. The SAS is critical to bypassing mental blocks, tapping reserves, tolerating pain, and interfacing with a crisis in progress, converting fear into willpower, and diverting blood to more vital functions. What is system but the rewiring of an organization to function with the same hierarchical efficiency as a living organism? The nervous system is communication, all vitals in healthy cooperation, beginning with a single term to the art of negotiating emotional states, to maneuvers that add to the solution, not the confusion. It's all at the mercy of communication. From first signal to first responder, clear transmission of information minimizes losses across the board, individual to individual, department to department, and agency to agency. Not knowing what to do in close quarters is the first step to accidental violence. With limited training time, a methodical process aids in keeping your head while under pressure. Layer by layer, skills are repotentialized. From the battery of fundamentals to the tactics of angles, APA draws a map of where to go and how to get there by expanding the sensitivity to the subtleties of performance. Any system with claims to state-of-the-art training are at a disadvantage if not utilizing simultaneity to upgrade all performance models, risking prolonged engagements and a reliance on more potentially lethal alternatives. To preserve civility, a clean capture is the best recourse. APA, the next dimension for close quarters. You can't escape the logic. The materials in the APA training program are still generations from being culminated by even the most progressive methods, and thanks to the man who did all the math, the founder, Chief Instructor Chris Marr, who first designed it to level up the members of Taiwan's SWAT team.